Hello, everyone, and happy Archaeology Day. My name is Jamie Wren, and I am the lab assistant for the University of Maine's Forensic Anthropology Laboratory. And while I'm sorry that we can't be together in person this year, I hope that you will still enjoy learning a bit more about our lab. Today, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of what forensic anthropology is, what we do in our lab, and finish up with an example of the type of cases that we do here at UMaine. Our lab director is Dr. Marcy Sorg. Dr. Sorg is the only board certified forensic anthropologist in the state of Maine, and she does all of the forensic cases for the medical examiner's office in Maine, New Hampshire, Delaware, Rhode Island, and Vermont. I've worked with her for about 12 years now and routinely do cases with her. The Forensic Anthropology Laboratory is located right in the heart of campus, overlooking the mall. We're primarily used as a teaching lab for the various courses that Dr. Sorg teaches. In fact, the blue boxes pictured on the right are our teaching collection. This teaching collection is made up of donated human skeletons, mainly their old medical specimens. In total, we have about 80 individuals in our collections that students are able to interact with and learn from. Some forensic cases are sent to the lab. Cases are sent from all over New England. It's important to point out that we only do what's called dry cases, so cases that are fully skeletonized. Cases that are still decomposing or maybe a little stinky, we will travel to the morgues in various states. And now, for those of you who are not familiar with forensic anthropology, generally speaking, is the study of human and sometimes non-human skeletal remains, usually for a legal purpose. Okay, so what does that mean? What I mean by that is, for example, if a skeleton was found in the woods, we help the medical examiner and law enforcement agency investigate the remains, be it a missing person or an old historic grave that's become uncovered. And now, during our examination, forensic anthropologists attempt to do three main things. First is estimate the time since death for the individual, be it a few weeks to decades. Develop what's called a biological profile, and also identify any trauma or damage that may have occurred to the remains before, at, or after death. An important takeaway for today is that forensic anthropologists do not determine the cause of death. That decision is made by the medical examiner, although they may rely heavily on our findings. So, in the previous slide, I used the term biological profile, but what does that mean? Well, a biological profile is something we create to estimate how a person may have appeared to others while they were alive. A complete biological profile consists of estimates of an individual's age, biological sex, height, ancestry, and any diseases or skeletal abnormalities that may help to identify them, such as if they had a gold tooth or a curved spine. Age is estimated in a large number of ways, but some common ones that we use are teeth. So over on the right-hand side, you can see a dental chart of when teeth erupt by age. It's very easy to use teeth to estimate the age for younger individuals. We can also estimate your age by how your bones have grown and how they appear. Most of your bones have things called growth plates on the end of them that don't fully attach and fuse together into a single solid bone until you're a teenager or a young adult, depending on the bone. And we know when those tend to fuse together, so we're able to estimate your age that way. We can also just estimate age just by looking at different bones. So for example, these black and white photographs are photographs of what's called the pubic symphysis. So that's where the two halves of your pelvis come together in the front of your body, just below your belt line. And in the upper left-hand corner, you can see that there are all these bumps and ridges on a younger person's pubic symphysis. And as they age, those will wear together each time you walk or stand or anything. And as you age, they get worn down and over time become much smoother and less bumpy and billowy. And now, like age, biological sex can be estimated in a number of different ways. For example, the angle of your jaw. Men tend to have a more square jaw than women. Um, the pelvis is very handy for estimating biological sex. Women tend to have a wider pelvic arch here in the front, as well as an overall wider and more bowl-shaped pelvis to accommodate for birth and pregnancy. Men tend to have more muscle than women, and so the muscle attachments, so where the muscle physically attaches to the bone, tend to be rougher and more bumpy, like we saw earlier, just because it needs to attach more sturdily. Finally, cranial anatomy, so just the shape of your skull. Um, Men tend to have a more robust and larger skull overall. So, for example, the ridge of bone that's just under your eyebrows tends to be much more pronounced in men than in women. So that was a very whirlwind crash course introduction to forensic anthropology, but I wanted to give plenty of time to talk about our example case, Mr. Mummy. So, this is the case of the mummy head. This mummy actually came to us from the Hudson Museum, which received it as a donation from a family in Bangor. The family's ancestor was a doctor and had received it as payment from a ship captain in the late 1800s. The ship captain had bought it many years earlier at a marketplace in Morocco in North Africa. Here's another view of Mr. Mummy. Historic research done by the Hudson Museum found that Mr. Mummy was consistent with mummies of the Ptolemaic period of the Roman Empire, when mummification had trickled down into the upper and middle classes, no longer the elite and ruling class. This was around 30 BCE. We know that Mr. Mummy is likely from this time period because of the indentations and staining on his forehead, as you can see here, and it's actually from a beaded headband that was common during this time period and unique to this time period, which is why we're able to estimate his age so precisely. And now you'll also notice that there's still quite a bit of skin left on Mr. Mummy, uh, which isn't ideal for an anthropological examination. Um, we typically like to have a clean skeleton to do our examination, but we didn't want to ruin the mummy. So to overcome this, we took it to a local hospital and had them put it through a CT scanner so that we were able to digitally do our examination. So we developed the biological profile for Mr. Mummy using these CAT scans, which is basically a series of x-rays that slice through the head. Mr. Mummy is 18 to 30 years of age, and the lower end of that we got by noticing that his third molar, or his wisdom tooth, had already erupted. The upper end we got by looking at the underside of his head. So this is the underside of his head. These are his eyes, and this is where his nose is, and this is where the back of his head would be. And what we're looking at, and what this arrow is pointing to right here, is where the bottom halves of his skull come together. This is called the basal suture, and it's just starting to come together and fuse together into a single bone. It's usually completely knit together into one bone by the time you're in your mid to late 30s, so we don't believe he's any older than 30. And, spoiler, you may have guessed it by now, Mr. Mummy is male. On the left-hand side here, you can see he has a very square jaw, which, as I mentioned previously, is more indicative of males. Likewise, this is the back of his head. So this is the back and underside of the head. This point right here is his little bump called the external occipital protuberance. It's fun to say. And if you feel on the back of your skull, you may be able to feel yours. If you don't have one, that's okay. But you can see this part of his skull is very rough, and this is where his neck muscles would have attached. Finally, we were able to estimate Mr. Mummy's ancestry using two different techniques. First, we looked at the general shape of his skull, and these two bones right here, you can see, are not typically present in most people. They're an anomaly, and while they're not specific to any given population, they're very rare and almost unheard of in populations deriving from Europe. So we typically know that he's not European. Secondly, we measured his skull, and in forensic anthropology, we love a good measurement. We call them osteometrics, which literally just means bone measure. And there are several you can take on the skull to help you figure out ancestry. Here are some here, so the width of his eyes and the length and breadth of his nose. And now here is another slice of that CT through the middle of Mr. Mummy's head, and just showing some more of the measurements that we took. We have a program called 4Disc that allows us to input these measurements, and it will tell us what population group a given specimen is closest to. And when we ran Mr. Mummy, we found that he was most like indigenous tribes of the current day Mali Republic and Kenya. So what does this mean? The green area is the region where those populations come from. The red is the Roman occupation of North Africa during the time of Mr. Mummy. And so Mr. Mummy likely came from somewhere in the overlapping regions circled in blue. So some interesting finds from Mr. Mummy. You can see here we're looking straight up his nose, and you can see right through to the inside top of his head. And now you shouldn't be able to do that. Typically, there is a plate of bone that separates your sinus cavity from your brain. And what likely happened here is during the mummification process, when they were removing his brain, they had to break through that. Mr. Mummy also had several cavities, as you can see here with the red arrows. So this is an excellent reminder to floss. This is a very big cavity right here. Also, we found that he had a very bad infection that was, in fact, so bad it ate away the bone in that black area. And he had what we call a healed socket, so he was missing a tooth prior to his death. And we know that it's healed because if it had been after death, there would still be a hole there. But since his bone was still growing at the time, it filled itself back in. So, in summary, from just that mummy head, we learned that he was a male, aged 18 to 30, from North Africa, approximately 30 BCE. There was evidence of mummification with the damage, obviously his preservation, but then the damage of his nose as well. And then there was evidence of really severe dental disease. And unfortunately, that's all the time I have for today, but I just wanted to say thank you again for having me, and I hope you learned something interesting, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your virtual lab tours. Thank you all. Take care.